Hi, I'm Tessa Ripley, and I will be presenting an emotional exploration of AI-generated music. Music at its core belongs to what makes us human. It surrounds us in our everyday lives, whether we actively register it or not. According to authors Conard, Molina, and Munzel, it has been for more than 35,000 calendar years, the year in which the first musical instrument discovered, a flute made out of vulture bones, dates back to. From the relaxed rhythms of Brazilian bossa nova to the syncopated diversity of rap music, music is a diverse cultural tool utilized across various different cultures. It's important to note that a common misconception is that music-invoked emotions only involve aesthetic experiences lacking motivational components, implying that music-invoked emotions are not capable of evoking real everyday emotions. But, in direct contrast to this view, according to researcher Stefan Kolsch, it actually elicits changes in physiological arousal, like in endocrine and autonomic activity, subjective feeling, like when music evokes feelings of pleasure, sadness, happiness, and so on, motor expression, like smiling or crying, action tendencies like dancing, foot tapping, clapping, etc., and possibly, but not necessarily, cognitive appraisal. Therefore, rendering that music actually does evoke real emotions. But in recent years, the landscape of music composition and production has undergone significant changes due to advancements in AI, or artificial intelligence. Thus striking much controversy due to chances of AI taking over the creative landscape. To reinstate this study aimed to investigate emotions evoked by AI-generated music versus human-composed music. Thus, bringing me to my research topic, the emotional implications of AI-driven musical production tools and their effects on musical audiences. I aim to accomplish three main goals in this research. Goal number one, bring light to the rich emotional and historical value that music has customarily always brought to human cultural society. Number two, raise ethical concerns about authenticity and consent. And three, to explore whether AI can replicate or replace the emotional depth posed in human performance. To come to these numerous conclusions, I had to analyze many studies, but these helped inform my argument best. Key study number one, artificial intelligence in music mashups, monetizing an opt-in closed universe database to preserve royalties and credit for composers and sound recording rights holders by Michael Epstein. This study discusses the idea of creating an opt-in database which would help artists and companies profit if AI uses their work. The author ultimately comes to the conclusion that we need regulations to establish a balance between innovation and protecting artists' creativity and integrity. Key study number two, artificial intelligence in vocal production. This study by Mika Keskalami goes over the fact of AI impacting the many vocal productions in modern music. By using interviews, case studies, and historical context, the research shows that AI is changing workflows, production accessibility, and raising ethical and legal questions. Perspectives from industry professionals bring insight into this by describing how AI is really changing the creative scope of our world. Though emotion is briefly discussed throughout these sources, because this topic is so current, there is limited research exploring the emotional implications of AI-generated music versus human-composed music. This really sparked my interest, so in order to address this gap, I adopted a research method. I chose to do an experimental design because I wanted to compare two conditions in order to see the differences between emotional responses. Specifically, I chose to do a single blind procedure, meaning that participants didn't know whether the piece they were listening to was AI-generated or human-composed, but I did, in hopes of reducing bias and ongoing expectations about AI-generated music. I I recruited participants through online distribution of Google Form via email. This choice was mainly for my self-convenience because this tool is known to be a free and efficient way to collect data and responses. I included 14 participants in the study. This sample included musical professionals, musicians, music students, and music educators in a 50-mile radius of me. I chose to include these specific people because musical professionals are more inclined to notice differences in musical compositional effects like dynamics and structure, thus potentially informing a higher quality response. Participants were not selected off of any identifying demographics like gender, race, religion, or ethnicity. Music excerpts. Participants were instructed to listen to two 30-second excerpts embedded in the Google form. Each excerpt was either made by me using the popular free AI generation music app, Suno AI, or I used a royalty-free online site where I got the Antonio Vivaldi's Concerto in F minor from the Four Seasons. Each music excerpt was completely instrumental in order to reduce any chances of emotions being evoked by lyrics or phrases, and I tried to select pieces that had extremely similar styles. So I tried to select pieces that had soft staccato, meaning notes are softly detached from each other. I tried to select pieces that had soft Baroque violin, meaning soft and smooth violin, and each had soft tone in order for a better comparison result. This blind listening approach was designed in order for participants to actually reflect their genuine reflection for their emotional response. I also took into account the current controversies with AI in our current world today. For ethicality, I gathered informed consent via an informed consent form embedded in my form. I ensured participant confidentiality. I did not plagiarize any of my data, and participants were able to withdraw from my study at any time. For equipment, I didn't use any special equipment in my study. The only equipment I used was my MacBook Air, which I used for formulating the survey and sending out the data. And participants had the choice of wearing Apple AirPods for the optimal listening experience, but it was not required due to my understanding of possible overstimulation or overwhelmingness that could be posed by wearing headphones like these. Emotional assessment model. Participants were instructed to listen to each clip in full before responding to the emotional response section. The emotional response section included the Geneva Emotional Musical Scale, 25, or GEMS 25. I will discuss this further in my presentation. The choice to use this was backed up with the fact that it is a specific measurement of music-evoked emotions, thus informing a better result for my data. Permission to use the scale was granted by its creator, Professor of Psychology at University of Innsbruck, Marcel Zenter. And my permission grant is here, and my survey description is over there. Participants were instructed to listen to each song and then rate how they felt across 25 different descriptors on a Likert scale. The descriptors included moved, emotional, tender, nostalgic, sad, tense, and so on. And then they rated how they felt on a Likert scale due to emotional intensity. 5 being emotion felt very much, 1 being emotion felt not at all. This brings me to my results. To interpret my data, I used a descriptive statistical method. I specifically chose to use this method due to its ability to interpret averages or means. Without this, my data would be a raw and unorganized mass of numbers, And by using descriptive statistics, I could organize it better and interpret it better. In addition, it is also used for observing differences and patterns in the data, which is very important later in my presentation. The independent variable was the type of music composition, like AI generated versus human composed, and the dependent variable was participants' ratings of emotional intensity for each GEMS category. I therefore conducted an analysis to find any potential patterns of emotional magnitude in the AI generated responses versus human composed responses. Here's what I found. I found two general patterns within my data. The first being human composed music producing higher mean ratings and showed larger differences in effective or immersive emotional responses. The second being AI generated music being associated with negative emotions like agitated or overwhelming. Here's a visual of my first pattern. Let's see. As seen in the chart, AI-generated music had a significantly lower percentage or mean score than human-composed music in descriptors such as moved, serene, or filled with wonder, which are all positively associated emotions. And pattern 2, as seen, overwhelmed and agitated, emotions that are typically viewed as negative, held extreme differences in the AI realm compared to the human-composed realm. Discussion and conclusion. After analyzing these emotional responses, it is clear that human-composed music elicited higher mean ratings overall. But there was a smaller difference in some emotions like moved, which means that some emotions were less affected by the AI-generated pieces versus the human-composed pieces. In addition, there was an association found between AI music with negative emotions like overwhelmingness and tension. Overall, participants reported stronger positive emotional engagement with human-composed music across multiple dimensions. With my research comes limitations. Limitation 1, sample size. I only had 14 participants in this study, meaning there could be a lack of statistical power and a lack of amount of generalizability. Limitation 2, sample bias. As I discussed before, although music professionals are more likely to have a higher quality response, it is also true that because of this training and higher sensitivity to music, they could have a different interpretation of the data in music compared to the general public. Limitation 3, restricted geographical scope. I only had data within a 50-mile radius, which means that my cultural diversity and generalizability could be lack thereof. Limitation 4, the music itself. I only had 2 pieces, meaning these claims could only be applicable to these 2 pieces and not a generalizable claim about all AI-generated music versus all human-composed music. My excerpts were also only 30 seconds long, meaning they could be too short to really view the actual emotional depth that could be posed in AI-generated music versus human-composed music. And although I tried to select pieces that were extremely similar in style, there still could be minor discrepancies that could inform participants to respond differently depending on the listener. Limitation 5, time restraint. As is, I only had 3 months to collect my data, and within these 3 months, I experienced various complications like meetings with important musical advisors being canceled, which led to a delayed distribution of my data and which could lead to lower quality responses. Limitation 6. My data is extremely self-interpretation based due to its emotional concepts, so participants could have rated their emotional intensities based on their mood or misunderstanding of descriptors. Limitation 7, listening environment. Because my data was so audio-based, it could be true that participants listened to it in different environments. The tunings could have been different according to different devices or different environments. Limitation 8, the AI piece itself. I only used one AI generation tool, and that this data could only be applicable to that one tool, Suno AI. This could also, which means this couldn't be generalizable to every single AI generation tool there is out there. And also, there's a sense of self-bias that I'd like to recognize. I recognize that I did AI generate a piece of music myself, which does inform some interesting ethical questions about my research. Implications. Overall, although it is clear that AI can produce real emotions within music, it does still lack in depth. But that doesn't mean that it can't be used as a supplementary tool alongside human-composed music, which could therefore reshape the creative landscape of our world. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to your question. How did you determine which results generated by your research method were most important in informing your new understanding?
Thank you for your question. Can you repeat it? Sorry.
Yep. How did you determine which results generated by your research method were most important in informing your new understanding?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So the results I determined to be most important in my research were definitely the two patterns. I think that was the most interesting to me. Going into it, I kind of had this conception that AI generated music was, I guess, what they call AI slop, and it would just be no emotional depth posed. But when I actually went into it and I started getting responses, people couldn't really tell which one was which. And it was really interesting to me finding out the association between AI generated music and negative emotions. I thought that was really interesting, and I think that really informed my understanding a lot.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, how did the limitations of your method or data influence your new understanding?
Thank you for your question. I did have a lot of limitations in my data, including geographical scope, my time restraint. Specifically, my time restraint really affected my data. I think I did have a meeting set up with a musical advisor, the head of music at UMass Dartmouth, and because of a snowstorm, it got canceled. And so I feel like if I did get the chance to have that meeting with him, I could have had higher quality responses from more people. So that would also, I don't know, I feel like my limitations could be less if that happened. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then if you could revisit your research process, what would you do differently and why?